Hello and welcome to Metric Insights. In this video, we're going to show you how to automate the process of collecting data from a SQL database or any other supported BI tools into Metric Insights. When creating a metric, report, or a dataset, we always define where it should take data from in the Editor Data tab. If we add data manually, for example via a spreadsheet, it is clear that we can update it only in the same way, manually. But if element data is fetched from a configurable data source, such as a SQL database or BI tool like Tableau or Click, we can also define that the data in the element should only be updated under specific conditions, such as after ETL completion. This ensures that the data from this data source is accurate and the element built from it is trustworthy. We provide several default triggers, but if you need this element to be updated on a specific time of the day or day of the week, you can add a new data collection trigger in few clicks. Just select Add New Data Collection Trigger from the bottom of this drop-down list and define the conditions for element update. Let's assume we want this trigger to run daily at 6 a.m. But if you go to the Dependencies tab, you will see that you can add trigger dependencies and data dependencies. Let's dive into it. Let's think about the typical situation for adding a trigger dependency. You want to ensure that all upstream report data is completed first, or all your short-running queries complete before long-running queries, or vice versa. So, for this example, I click Add New Trigger Dependency and select Reporting Refresh. Only after this trigger successfully runs, my new daily trigger will run as well. You can also configure data dependency, which means that this trigger is going to run and update the elements it is assigned to you, only if certain data conditions are met. For example, let's add a new data dependency. Let's call it ETL complete. What do we want to achieve by adding this dependency? We want the system, before updating elements with this trigger, to make sure that today we have enough data for update. Basically, we'll be checking the number of rows in the database, and after it reaches the required number, the daily collection trigger will get green light. Now, let's frame our requirements in a query. Select the case when the count of records returns more than 1,000. It can be 10,000 or any other number depending on your data load. Then, return one record from daily sales summary table. And we can set this dependency on a timer. For example, we know that ETL takes place between 5 a.m. and 1 p.m. So I want the query to run every 5 minutes until data load is complete. So it will run at 5 o'clock, 5:05, 5:10, 5:15, and if, let's say, the number of records will reach the required number of 1,000 at 7 a.m., that's when the condition is going to be satisfied and the system will allow the dependent data collection trigger to fire and go ahead and update the elements it is applied to. In another example, we're going to create a data dependency to make sure that the data for the previous day has been collected. The key parameter here is not a specific number of records collected, but whether they were collected in the right date. This is going to be a new dependency in our data collection trigger, and since now we want to check dates, let's call it ETL date check. Let's specify the data source. In our example, this is going to be a SQL data source as well, and let's create a query. Return one record from daily sales summary table, where date in the calendar date column is going to be greater than or equal to now, minus 1 day, which is translated to human language as yesterday. Again, I want it to run every 5 minutes, from 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. and save it. This is how we created two conditions, aka data dependencies, which should be satisfied daily to allow this trigger to fire and update the elements it is applied to. So, now you know how to create data collection triggers and establish trigger or data dependencies with certain conditions. If you have any further questions, leave them in the comments below or send them to our support team at support@metricinsights.com.